Beloved by children of a generation, Elidor was one of those books long before Hogwarts that you read at school and it grabbed the imagination. I clearly remember it being read out in class back in the mid-1970s to a bunch of snotty kids in a Nottingham backwater and being fascinated by it. So it was my surprise that I found out that a TV version of it made back in 1995. Was it any good? Did it capture the spirit of the book? Let's have a look. Whilst the parents are preparing for their upcoming house move, 4 children, Roland, Helen, Nick and David, take a trip into Manchester. After wandering around the desolate streets, they discover an old abandoned church. 3 of the children go into the church to retrieve a lost football and then disappear. Roland goes inside and is transported to the ravaged fantasy land of Elidor. He must rescue his brothers and sisters and take 4 treasures back home to Manchester and protect them from evil forces. But the evil forces start to track the children down and break down the barriers between Elidor and our world. Consisting of a total of 6 25-minute episodes, Elidor was first broadcast on Wednesday the 4th of January 1995 and finishing on Wednesday the 8th of February in that 5:05 slot. It was followed by a repeat the following Sunday morning on BBC Two. The author of the original book, Alan Garner, worked closely with Don Webb to bring this production to the screen and introduced a couple of new characters in the form of the lead warrior and the sniffer to help flesh out the Elidor side of the story. Garner is even quoted as saying, "I'm expecting a deluge of posts saying, 'How dare I let the BBC muck around the book?' But I shall have to write back and say, 'Actually, I think it's better.'" In an earlier video, I suggested that The Watch House was the last good scary kids TV series the BBC made, and then someone reminded me of this. And as I said before, I loved this book at school. I've read it aloud to my own kids and we even watched this series at the same time. I've even got a pristine unread 1967 paperback copy on my shelf somewhere. I've read a couple of negative reviews about it and I always try and watch these series as I would have done as a child, not as a cynical adult. Now don't get me wrong by the way, Elidor the TV series isn't perfect, but it's as good as you could have hoped for. The kids' acting ability is okay, it's nothing to write home about and we've seen worse. Reddy Kropinski, playing the hunter, and Ebby Enola, playing the sniffer, are probably the most memorable characters in the show. They are wonderfully creepy in their pursuit of the children, however, on reflection, maybe they were used just a little bit too much for filling and became a little bit pantomimey towards the end. I must also mention the BBC special effects, which were okay for the time. Similarly, the computer-generated opening credits, perfectly suitable for a home computer CD-ROM multimedia adventure back in the 1990s, but like the effects, a little dated now. Sadly, this series has never been released on VHS or DVD or even streamed on any platform. It's fortunate then that 20 years ago I managed to pick up one of those special DVDs that used to sell on eBay, copies of which are now uploaded to YouTube, so you can watch it in the comfort of your own home. The book has remained in publication since 1965 and is still beloved today. Described by the writer as an anti-Narnia, it's a fantasy, but not as much as the Narnia books or Middle-earth. In fact, the children spend most of their time in England, not Elidor itself. There is an audiobook version of this I've come across, read by Robert Powell, which you can listen to on YouTube as well. It was also adapted as a radio play back in 2011 by Don Webb, who produced this series. Again, this is also available on YouTube, and I'll put the links down below. Damien Zook is without doubt the best of the young actors here, and he did have some further success on TV, especially in the series At Home with the Braithwaites, but nothing visible since 2003, and is now a software development team leader. Suzanne Croshaw, who plays Helen, is now best known as Suzanne Shaw. She was one of the original members of that manufactured pop group Hearsay, followed a couple of years on by a big stint in Emmerdale before stepping away from the industry to concentrate on her family. Both Alexander Trippier, who played David, and Gavin Morris, who played Nick, appear to be now outside of the performing industry. Stephen Rimkus best known for his appearance in the 1980s long-forgotten soap Gems, was a TV regular during the 80s and 90s, but very little since 2005. Rennie Krupinski, who played the lead warrior, is still a TV regular to this day. Ebby Enola, the sniffer, had numerous TV credits to her name, but is now a transformational coach/mentor. The early scenes of the book and series were set in the Manchester slums as they were being knocked down, and a lot of the locations for the series were filmed in Manchester itself. However, despite extensive research, I've been unable to find any of the exact locations. If you know, drop me a line. The series, the book and many of the other books by Alan Garner were the Harry Potter of our 1970s. I have to recommend this TV series, especially if you're reading the book at the same time. The book has aged well, the series maybe not so much, but to be honest, as I said, this is the best version you're going to see. For kids, it would have been great. For older fans of a book, it's not so great. It starts off well, sags a bit, and then it gets a little bit rushed at the end. Too much time with the hunters and Malabron wandering around Elidor for no reason. It really needs a good remake which stays faithful to the book, but also explores a fantasy world in a little bit more detail. However, this adaptation is thoroughly enjoyable, if you remember who its target audience is. Well, I enjoyed it anyway. Until next time, goodbye.